Chapter 2: Heaven and Earth and the Tractor. That day, under the heavy, humid air of the Danish countryside, everything seemed to sweat in silence. Days like this were rare in this region. The dull wind carried a faint scent of salt. After all, the sea wasn't far. It was one of those strangely sticky late summer afternoons where time feels suspended. Not much was moving. Lucky were those who had a cold lemonade at hand and nothing else to do. But not everyone had that luxury. Thunderstorms were forecast for the evening, but for now, there was no sign of them. Just a few towering clouds in the distance. There's still time, thought the tall, broad-shouldered boy who had work to do. He climbed into his father's tractor, ready to head out and sow the winter barley. The family lived on a small farm. The farmhouse stood 100 meters or so from the road, tucked behind a little birch grove. In many ways, it was the picture of rural charm, a small red wooden house with white-framed windows, white gables, a white carved porch, and a grey tin roof starting to rust in places. The barn, which housed the animals, had a roof even rustier. Then there was the old annex house, now empty, though sometimes used to host summer guests. And the earth cellar, rarely used nowadays, except maybe to store a few barrels of sauerkraut. In the past, before refrigerators, it had been the farm's natural cooler. In winter, people used to lay thick slabs of ice inside. They'd last until spring. Behind the house was a garden with fruit trees and vegetable beds. It was a typical Scandinavian idyll. Everything looked like it belonged to another time. But the farm had long since entered the modern age. There were tractors instead of horses, cars instead of carts. A gas tank supplied hot water year-round, no need to fire up the wood stove in summer. The old tiled stove still stood in the living room, though. White glazed with delicate flower patterns and a carved capital, it was a true work of art. It was still used in winter from time to time, mostly for the cozy feeling it brought. The kitchen had a wood-burning stove too, and in the cold months, it often crackled with fire, warming the room while helping prepare meals. This house was designed with practicality in mind. From the outside, it looked homely. Inside, it was cozy and well used. There were modern touches here and there, a new kitchen, father's sleek Danish design desk and office chair, but most things were older, the tiled stove, the big soft sofa that once belonged to Uncle Sven. Father had brought it home himself after Sven died, hauling it 50 kilometers on an open trailer behind the tractor because he didn't want to pay for delivery. It had nearly gotten soaked in the rain, if the neighbors hadn't helped unload it just in time. Ah yes, the father. His name was Bjorn. A weather-worn man, married to Freya, the mother of the sturdy boy. At first glance, they didn't seem to match. He was built like a tree, and she was delicate, almost fragile. But looks were deceiving. When necessary, and it often was, she could work just as hard as he did. Only in her eyes could you glimpse a shimmer of melancholy, the quiet resignation of dreams set aside, worn down by the rhythm of daily life. Life on a farm left little room for rest, and even less for dreaming. Winter was the slowest season, but still full of work, feeding livestock, mucking out stalls, fixing everything that had broken during the busy months. There was always something to do. In winter, the men, Bjorn and his son, would head into the woods to cut and split firewood. The mother would stack it, neatly, for the next year. So no, even winter wasn't peaceful. And romance? Long gone. Over time, Bjorn and Freya had become a well-practiced team, like two draft oxen pulling under the same yoke. Neither too fast, neither too slow. Most of the friction had worn away. It was almost a marriage of purpose. Freya had come from another farm, bringing a good stretch of land into the marriage. That had made her extra appealing. Beauty fades, but hectares remain, people would say with a chuckle. And for Bjorn, there was truth in that. Then there was the girl, Della. She was 8 years old and still in school, of course. But she was nothing like the others. She had started painting early, and she painted beautifully. With precision. She was as delicate as her mother, and behind her wide, alert eyes you could almost see her mind constantly recording everything around her. She was often lost in thought, the way creative people tend to be. Not the best trait for life on a working farm. She'd already earned her share of scoldings for daydreaming during chores, as her father saw it. Just the other day, she'd been told to collect eggs before breakfast. Her mother was waiting. First, Ella couldn't find her boots, so she slipped on her mother's, far too big. She trudged through the mud in her raincoat and oversized rubber boots. And then? She simply stayed there in the shed. The rest of the family sat at the table, waiting. But Ella didn't return. She had her reasons. In the henhouse, she sat quietly in the straw, gently stroking her favorite hen, one she had cared for over several years. When Father stormed in, already annoyed, he found her there, peaceful, dreamy, unaware of the storm gathering behind him. It was raining outside, yes. But the real thunder rolled through the henhouse. He barked at her in frustration, and later at the table, she sobbed quietly over her breakfast. She was soft, not just in appearance, but inside, too. And her father was not the kind of man who easily sensed such things. He'd been shaped by hardship and strictness. His own father had taught him obedience, with a stick. Compared to that, he was already gentle when he only raised his voice. After all, Ella was a girl. And girls, well, you couldn't treat them the way you did boys. At least not in Joran's mind. The son, though, had taken his share of slaps in earlier years. But he was clever, he rarely needed a second one for the same offense. Lately, there were no more slaps. The boy had ended that himself. Once, he broke the handle of a hoe while working. His father slapped him. The boy said, "That was the last one, Dad. Next time, you can do this alone." Joran had seen the resolve in his son's eyes. And since then, things had slowly changed between them. The boy was 17 now. Nearly as skilled a farmer as his father. And his father was proud. Not long ago, he sent the boy to the livestock market. He was supposed to bring home one calf. That evening, he returned with two, each on a rope in his hand. He had haggled like an old pro. Joran had been impressed. His son clearly found the same joy in farming that he did. And not just that, the boy had become as tall and solid as his father once was. Last winter, during the quiet days between Christmas and New Year, they had pulled out the old photo box from Grandma Gitter's cupboard. And there it was, a photo of Joran, young and strong. The spitting image of his son. They'd all been surprised by how alike they were. The boy had known how to drive a tractor since he was 12. At 16, it was legal. At 17, it was second nature, like riding a bike for other boys. And he loved it. The feeling of having a powerful diesel engine rumbling beneath him, strong enough to drag heavy plows through thick soil, that was something special. Men have a thing for engines, after all. But the moment when he pulled the lever and the hydraulic arms lowered the plow into the earth, that moment felt like riding a great beast, muscles straining, dragging a fallen tree from the forest. He could feel the horsepower come alive, surging through the steel and aluminum frame, awakened by diesel and air. To him, the machine wasn't cold or lifeless. It was a green armored dragon. And at 17, he was already its rider. He loved that part of farm life. And he loved that his father trusted him enough to let him handle such an expensive machine. It made him feel like a man, one of the grown-ups. And that's what he wanted to be, big, strong, respected. On that particular day, everything went as usual. The boy filled the tractor's tank at the farm's diesel station. He circled the vehicle, checking tires and hydraulic lines. He attached the counterweights under the radiator, then mounted the seed drill, connected it, and filled it with seed. Ready to go. Which brings us back to the beginning. He climbed into the tractor, closed the cab door, started the engine, pressed the clutch, shifted into first gear, and drove off. "Let's hope the crows don't eat everything out of the furrow again today," he muttered into his barely there beard. But this time, he was prepared. He had taken up a new hobby the year before, shooting. Or rather, hunting. His father had taught him, as a farmer, you need to defend what's yours. And handed him a brand new rifle. Joran used to be allowed to shoot geese in the fields. That was forbidden now. But foxes and crows? Still legal. And crows were his favorite targets. That's why he had a fresh box of ammunition in his jacket pocket, his rifle tucked behind the driver's seat, and a clear goal for the day: to thin out the Crow population considerably.